We spend most of our time with those closest to us, mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters. We often look alike too. What happens when we don't?
Adoption is not right for everybody. So I think if in your heart you feel it's right for you, then you shouldn't worry about what anyone else has to say about it.
Eligama lika adopt lisetyenziswa emlungwini othe wathatha umntwana womuntu omnyama kuthiwa hayi ke this is my adopted child. Asiyenzi ke lonto esintwini.
Family, a basic social unit consisting of parents and their children, considered as a group, whether living together or not. This is the dictionary meaning of the word family. Why then are multiracial families still not considered just that? It's easy to assume that a group of individuals consisting of adults and children walking in public are a family when they are all the same color. But all that changes when one of the people in the group, particularly a child, is a different race to the rest. Johannesburg Child Welfare gives us the definition of adoption.
Adoption ukuthatha umntwana ongamzalanga kube umntwana wakho ngomthetho umkhulise aze abe umuntu omdala azoba independent kodwa umthathe ngomthetho.
Adoption is an involved process that could take months.
You have to be seen by a social worker to be interviewed ukuthi utholakala ukuthi suitable to be an adoptive parent. Ufanele ube nama sources in terms of finances sibona ukuthi uzoba nakho ukuthi wondle umntwana kahle umkhulise kahle ube nekhaya uzokhulisela umntwana kulo.
A lot of children are put up for adoption from birth. This was the case with the Tanny's children.
Max was 4.5 months and Bella was 5 months.
After being married for years, it was tough to discover that they couldn't have any children of their own.
We couldn't conceive, and the next step was to go for unnatural thing. So originally we thought we were going to have natural kids first and then adopt. But then when it came to maybe have twins or triplets and then force it, we decided no, and we just want to be parents. So then it was the normal thing to adopt.
When they adopted their children, they knew that parenting comes with many challenges.
I think that it is a challenge because, especially the language, neither of us speak an African language, and that I think is important. They learn Zulu at school, which we encourage. Gerald's French, so they speak French and English. So I feel that, especially living in Africa, that helps. And in terms of tradition and things like that, both of them are very musical, and I think that comes through the genes, so we're trying to encourage that. And in every way that we can, we try to expose them as much as we can. The hair's been a very big challenge for us because we're not used to that at all, but we're finally finding the solutions
Just give up on the
there.
hair thing. Just give up on the hair thing. Okay? My hair's fine, so just give up.
Many might ask, why did they opt for children not the same race as them?
For me, it's a bonus that they don't have my genes. Because I think the genes you give them, no matter, you don't have a choice, you give them. The good and the bad. They've got their own genes, and so we're much more equal, which is better, I think. Which is also the bad thing with people, because often people relate to you as different parents. Lots of people would say, it's nice you with them like if they were your own kids, but they are own kids, So, but people that have natural children, they don't see it like that. They will still be a difference. So I personally try to feed that difference. I think it's good that we're different.
Jenny says she would encourage people to go the adoption route.
adoption isn't as common in the black community because it's not a formalized thing. If a child is homeless, you take them into your home because that's your responsibility of Ubuntu. So I think that it helps especially white people and other cultures to understand that where this child is a child and it's not this person's child or that person's child. So I think that definitely, I think the more people that consider adoption, the more people talk to each other and the more and more that it bridges the gaps.
But cultural experts differ. Umama uNokzola Mdende, director of Icamako Heritage Institute eSedugwa, will not accept a simple reason behind interracial adoption.
Mna kwelibaka landikulo lobudala ndisoloko ndisiva eligama lika-adopt lisetyenziswa emlungwini othe wathatha umntwana womntu omnyama. Kuthiwa hayi ke this is my adopted child. Asiyenzi ke loo nto esintwini. Esintwini umntwana uyamthatha abe ngowakho.
According to Umama Umdende, as culturally diverse as Mzansi is, children need to accustom themselves to their traditions.
Abantwana ba-adoptwe ngabelungu bangazazi ingcambu zabo, abazi ilwimi labo, abazi masiko abo, bangabelungu abamnyama, kodwa ke batyebile kuba bafundiswe kwizikolo eziphucukileyo, banikwa zonke izinto, bakhulile ke ngoku sebebadala. Uyawufumanisa into yoba batyebile kodwa bahleli ubomi bobusizi. Ndingathi they are wealthy but are miserable.
All children have basic needs, a loving family and shelter. Which is more important, culture or these needs? Saskia and her daughter Jess have been together for 13 years. Saskia is the only parent Jess knows.
I've always had a love for children, and I believe in South Africa there are many, many children who need loving and caring homes. I didn't have this burning desire to have my own child, and so I decided to, as a single parent, go the adoption route.
Saskia believes that children are just that and should be let to be.
I like to encourage Jess and to understand that she is black. I mean, she knows she's black. She can see she's black. And rather of having a black culture or a cultural existence, rather to try and encourage being a South African, because we're all South Africans. We, since 1994, have become one nation, and even though sometimes people don't think that way, I'd rather look at her as being a South African rather than, yes, she must be proud that she's black and has she's lucky enough to live in the environment and grow up in a multicultural, multilingual society. So I think I've tried and she did learn an African language for a while, but unfortunately, in my opinion, learning a language at school doesn't necessarily teach you to speak. So I would encourage, and I want to encourage people out there that it's not a necessity that they have to do a black language because they're black, but rather be able to converse and get by in a basic conversation, which you're not necessarily going to learn at school.
Umama Umdende feels that black children adopted outside of their race are being done a favor.
Ufumanisa into yoba xa ndijongile ubunzulu babo ayibo bunzulu bothando, bubunzulu bokubonakalisa ukungalingani. Lo uthatha umlungu othatha umntwana womntu omnyama, uyawufumanisa into yoba lo muntu ithathwa le nto ngokungalingani kwe-classes. Ngoneklasi ocingela uba iphezulu ethatha oneklasi ocingela into yoba iphantsi. Kuthi ke koba njalo kube khona ke laa ngqondo yokuba noko uyonyusa umgangatho walo mntwana uziswa kulo mgangatho womlungu, ngoko ke wenzelwa inceba yokuba athathe lo mntwana. Umlungu angam-adopta kodwa makamazi ubungubana kuthendi le nto uba ayo-class divide le nto kuthendi le nto ungekho bantu abamnyama aba-adopta belungu nantsi incwadi ufuna undixelela uba there are no poor whites zikhona poor whites.
Manje Mbugeli, if a child is adopted, how do the adoptive parents know which cultural group the child comes from?
If a child is abandoned, which many of them are, unless you can really distinguish between a different cultural Zulu, Xhosa, Tswana, how do you know if that child has been abandoned, if they are a Zulu or if they are a Sotho? So rather than having no parents, my message is to the people out there that to encourage adoption. And you don't know what you're getting. Even if you have your own child, you don't know if that child is going to be disabled or have learning disabilities or what have you, and you embrace that child as your own because that child is yours, but at the same time it's just as easy to embrace an adopted child.
A valid question, especially if the child was given up for adoption from birth or, in worst cases, abandoned.
So most of those that are abandoned, they are abandoned with no form of identification. So we are expected to give them assumed names and assumed surnames, and their date of birth is being estimated by the professionals, meaning that the doctors in that regard. And then we are expected to try and trace the families. So hence, in most cases, you would find that in the newspapers, we do publish photos of the children in an attempt to trace if there would be anyone who would identify the child. And if there isn't any form of identification, then we are bound to find permanent placement for the child.
There are many children deserving of loving homes. Many of these adoptable children are said to be in foster care, which is not a permanent solution.
Adoption as a whole is not for everybody, and those very same people would probably not have a problem bringing a black child into their home. They just wouldn't want to call it their child. So I think that if you can love a child, it's not about them being your child or not your child. It's somebody that you love and they need you, and in return you get a lot back. So I know that some families have adopted and their parents or grandparents are very anti-interracial adoption, and they've almost had to choose rather having a child and their family never speaks to them again, and that's very hard for them. But I think that you know in your heart what is right for you, and adoption is not right for everybody. So I think if in your heart you feel it's right for you, then you shouldn't worry about what anyone else has to say about it.
There are several reasons why children are available for adoption.
Gakolo, I would say, is the socio-economic condition of the country, because most of Abantu, basuka from rural areas, come into the towns or Joburg per se, and even those who come from other countries, they come to South Africa and the hub is Joburg. They think life is in Joburg, and mabafikelana thola ukuthi life is very difficult. They don't have abathola umsebenzi and they don't have accommodation. And some of them end up falling pregnant, due to their circumstances, and it's unplanned pregnancies. And Batolobuti, they are not in a position to care for those children, and they give them up for adoption. So it's that factor. And 14 Noguti, currently, a lifestyle I suffer nakdala. In the past, families were able to take care of, children that were born out of marriage per se. So Ogwamanje, it's like that that family bond is no longer there. And some of these mothers would say, I don't want them back home to know that I became pregnant, because some of them bashiye abantwana emakhaya bazala eGoli bathi bazosebenza.
Johannesburg Child Welfare confirms that black children's availability far outweighs those of their white or Indian counterparts. Waiting lists are long, and anticipating parents to be just cannot wait.
There is this thing with sibona belungu bahamba nabantwana mnyama, So, but we do tell them that white children are very scarce, and as a result, Joburg Child Welfare has closed the waiting list for white babies or for white adopters, because we hardly get white children. So mainly sithola abantwana abamnyama, hence the practice is they get black babies, and even abelungu abafuna abantwana sesibatshela ukuthi if they want white babies, unfortunately we cannot help them because we don't have any.
Melita only speaks for the Johannesburg Child Welfare, but adoption agencies and welfares across Mzansi will agree that children who need homes are on the increase.
Approximately 120 for Joburg Child Welfare, 120 children per year, and mostly the parents would want to adopt young children, as in under a year, because they feel that they will be able to raise a child and groom the child according to their standards. Although there are other parents who specifically want older children, older as in between 2 and 5 years, and it becomes a bit of a challenge for older children because no child has got to grow up in an institution. So mainly the children that get easily adopted are those which are under 3 years.
Umama Umdende says the long-term effects will show when these children are much older.
Uthi ngoku xa ehleli nabelungu xa sele kusemsebenzini ke ngoku kuba ngoku kuyasetyenzwa ngoku akusacaci into ka-adoption ngoku kuyasetyenzwa ngoku xa sele kusemsebenzini ngumlungu lo ngumntu omnyama lona ufumanisa into yoba isikakhulu kweli cala labelungu kuba lo akalwazi ulwimi lwabantu bakubo naxa bethetha ngenkcubeko yabo akayazi le nto bathetha ngayo abe umlungu yena ethetha ngenkcubeko yasesilungwini abe yena engathethi ngale nkcubeko so bane-identity crisis.
Usually, adoptive parents do not want to confuse their children by allowing the natural parents to be part of their lives, but ultimately it's up to the children.
Before the New Children's Act, the children that were consented, meaning that by the mothers or even both parents signed consent, they gave them up for adoption. They were told that after the 6 days period lapsed, that is post-signing consent and the child has been adopted, they wouldn't be in a position to try and, make contact with the children. It's only the adopted children who were allowed by the law, once they reached 18, to try and link up with their biological families or families of origin. But with the New Children's Act, there is provision made for post-adoption contract, meaning that if the biological parent is giving the child up for adoption and they would want to keep or to maintain contact with the child, that has to be in the report, and the court has to order that should happen, meaning that the adoptive family should allow that contact, but it has to be reasonable contact so as not to confuse the child as well.
According to experts, there are many children who are available for adoption, but the number of children being adopted is declining. Times are changing. Not everyone wants to have a child of their own, but for some it's not even a matter of choice, as infertility rates are also on the rise. And sadly, such headlines have featured greatly in our print media. If there are loving and willing families out there who are capable of taking these children and raising them, why should it even be a question of race? Love has no color, and the joy in these children's and their families' eyes says a whole lot more than words could ever express.
Brought to you by SABC News, Africa's news leader.